I was a pretty brave person when I was younger. Or maybe it was that sense of invincibility that comes with youth. I'd survived some pretty intense things. A stalker who pursued my sister and me for over a year and a half, being sexually assaulted, 2 house fires, and growing up in a house that I swear to you was haunted. Not in that Disney way either. I'm talking about a torture chamber in the basement and strange things going on. Anyway, I suppose looking back then, having been through all that, made me feel a little like I was sort of invincible. Or maybe I just assumed that I'd gotten all the bad stuff out of the way, and nothing else would happen. Whatever it was, I learned to know better when I was 17. I didn't have a driver's license. In fact, I was 36 before I ever did. I walked to most places, occasionally catching rides with friends, and less occasionally hitchhiking. The night in question was one of those seldom-seen occasions when I decided to hitchhike, having worked late and being too exhausted to walk. Now, most of the time when I hitch a ride, I wouldn't get in the car with a lone man, only women, or rarely, men with a wife or girlfriend and/or kids in the car. This night, though, cars were few and far between, and it was cold. To be perfectly frank, when he pulled over, I took a good look and figured I could take him if he tried anything. I was on the slender side, and there was an estranged, friendless aura about him, even though he looked healthy enough. I got into the car after we agreed on a destination. We exchanged names, and I wound my fingers in front of the heating vent. He spoke quietly, asking a few questions about if I was a local and how I liked living here. He said he'd only been there a couple of months but found it beautiful and hoped that he could find happiness. That comment struck me as a little odd, but I brushed it off. It began to snow and the road quickly got slippery, so he slowed and kept his eyes straight out the windshield, driving silently. I was okay with that, as small talk had never been my forte. About 10 minutes later, I noticed a corner of the intersection we were approaching seemed to be sliding, so I yelled, "Watch out!" He immediately hit the gas, shooting to the intersection, and burst out with, "Don't ever scream at me." Needless to say, I was taken aback. I said, "Look, this is close enough. Just pull over here and I can get there myself." He didn't seem to hear me. Richard, did you hear me? I said you can pull over here and let me out now." No response. He just stared straight ahead, driving faster now than he had been since it began to snow. To say I was scared doesn't seem to cover the depth of fear that began to arise in me. I didn't know if I should stay quiet or speak, but I was damn sure not going to yell after his outburst. After going about a mile, he began to mumble under his breath. I couldn't quite make out what he was saying. I assumed he was speaking to me, so I said, I couldn't hear you." He began to speak quietly and rapidly, saying things like, "You're always yelling at me. I've told you time and time again I don't appreciate being yelled at. But do you listen? No. Well, I'm done listening to you now. Do you hear that?" I was at a complete loss, and I didn't know what to say in response or if I should say anything at all. I contemplated just jumping out of the car, but nixed that idea when I realized the door lock was missing. It was just a silver-toned where it should have been. I started to cry and debated with myself about causing an accident by grabbing the wheel and opening the door. But at least I figured there was a chance I'd survive that. He suddenly looked at me for the first time since I got into the car. He blinked several times rapidly, then slowed the car, pulling into a gas station. I waited to see if he'd unlock the doors, not wanting to say anything and risk setting him off again. After about a minute or two, he quietly said, "I think I'd better let you out here," and hit the button to open the locks. I wasn't about to hesitate. I jumped out of the car as if it were on fire. I was about to turn and walk into the gas station when he called my name. He looked so damn sad, so I hesitated. He apologized, said he was sorry if he'd frightened me. He would never have harmed me, and asked if I'd be able to get home okay. I said that I would, and closed the door. He began to pull out of the gas station lot, but stopped suddenly. He just sat there for a couple of minutes, his head down. I froze, wondering what the hell he was up to. I was about to run into the station, but he opened his window and yelled at me, waving something in his hand. It was my hat, and I'd left it on his seat. I rarely approached the driver's side of the car, and he handed it to me, apologizing again. what else to say, so I just said, "Thank you." I watched as he drove off, making sure he was out of sight before moving on so he wouldn't know which direction I was heading. I decided to go to a friend's and stop my home. As I walked, I went to put my hand back on, and out from a piece of paper folded into the paper was a $100 bill. The paper said, "I'm sorry. Please take a cab and don't hitchhike anymore." I didn't. In fact, it was the last time I ever hitched a ride alone. In the 1980s, my father, a dedicated electrical engineer, often found himself working late hours. It wasn't unusual for him to head home around midnight to the small cabin he shared with a friend, nestled deep within the canyon walls. On this particular night, rain was pouring down, and occasional bursts of lightning illuminated the muddy, washed-out path. As my father turned the corner onto the dirt road, he passed a substantial willow tree. His headlights revealed a young woman in her early 20s with disheveled, long brunette hair crouching beneath it. She wore casual attire and clutched a rather sizable bundle wrapped in cloth. Being the kind-hearted man he was, my father decided to pull over and offer her refuge from the storm in his cabin, located just up the road. She smiled warmly and thanked him as she stepped into his vehicle. She explained that she had been on a hiking expedition through the canyon when the storm had suddenly caught her off guard. Dad noted that her attire was far from suitable for hiking, and she admitted she'd embarked on her adventure impulsively, unprepared for the elements. He offered to dry any wet belongings at his cabin, gesturing towards the bundle she held firmly under her arm. Her voice suddenly turned firm as she replied, "No." As my father inquired about her residence in the area, things began to take a peculiar turn. She disclosed that she had no local friends or family and offered only vague responses when asked for specific details about her dwelling. Her explanation was simply that it was too far to reach in such inclement weather. At this point, my father began to feel uneasy, but he attributed it to her exhaustion from hours of hiking in the storm. Upon their arrival at the cabin, he remembered that his roommate had left earlier that day for a trip and wouldn't return for several days. Given the absence of a spare bedroom, my father hesitated to offer her his friend's room without permission, especially in an era when pocket cell phones were not yet ubiquitous. Instead, he suggested she rest on the couch to dry off, handing her several towels. She accepted the towels with her right hand, but still clung to the bundle under her left arm. Realizing that she hadn't shared her name, my father introduced himself. "Nice to meet you. I'm John," he said. She reciprocated with a friendly, "I'm Sarah." This put my father somewhat more at ease. He turned on the television for her and handed over the remote. After flipping through channels, Sarah settled on a gangster movie. During a scene featuring mobsters being shot, she found it oddly amusing and began to laugh in a high-pitched, eerie tone. This unnerved my father. Her enjoyment seemed unsettling. Attempting to engage in conversation about her life, my father asked if she was in a relationship. She pointed to her belt buckle and proceeded to narrate a disturbing tale of her recent breakup. She claimed that her ex-boyfriend had attempted to dominate her, and her response was to brutally assault him on his gravel driveway with her belt buckle, the same one she was wearing. He kept begging, "Stop, please stop." But I refused to show him mercy, she declared with a chilling hint of pride. My father inquired whether her ex-boyfriend had been abusive towards her, or if she was acting in self-defense. She scoffed at the idea and coldly asserted, "No, if he had been abusive, he'd be dead." As the conversation progressed, Sarah shared increasingly distressing stories. She recounted her mother's tragic death during surgery, describing how the surgeon, covered in blood, casually assured her that everything was fine. Sarah couldn't fathom how her mother could be all right with her insides discarded in a trash can. She followed this macabre tale with another unsettling laugh, gazing back at the TV, which depicted bullet-riddled corpses. "I love the sight of blood. It excites me, turns me on. You know, death, draining them to death," she revealed. My father's discomfort grew with each passing moment. While he was larger and stronger than Sarah, and had experienced his share of life's horrors, Her violent confidence and her unwavering grip on the mysterious bundle under her arm sent shivers down his spine. He knew he needed a plan. Suddenly, an idea materialized in my father's mind. I have a friend who's a priest in town. He oversees various shelters funded by the church. You'd be more comfortable there than on our couch. They can also provide food and arrange a ride for you in the morning. I can call him right now. He's only a few miles away, he offered reassuringly. Sarah's disposition instantly brightened as she eagerly accepted the idea. That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, she exclaimed. My father smiled, concealing his relief. Of course, it's the least I can do for you. With that, he walked over to the phone to dial his priest friend's number. However, as he began to make the call, Sarah's demeanor underwent a sudden, startling transformation. She emitted a low, guttural growl and muttered with intense bitterness, "I hate priests, despise them." Her vehement tone carried a deep-seated aversion. My father had reached his limit. This was no longer a mere encounter with a stranger displaying unusual behavior. A darkness brimming with malevolence had crossed the threshold into his home. With firm resolve, he told her, "You need to leave, and you need to leave now." He pointed toward the cabin's front door. "There's the exit. I can't have you here. It doesn't feel safe. I'm sorry, but the storm has passed, and I don't want you walking in the dark. But that's the way it has to be. Please leave." Sarah gazed at him, her expression devoid of emotion, and ultimately shrugged. My father escorted her out, standing nearby in case the bundle concealed any potential threat. He wasn't willing to take any chances. She smiled at him one last time as she slowly made her way to the front porch. "Goodbye for now. We'll meet again when the time comes," she stated calmly. With that, she ventured down the lengthy dirt road illuminated by a single streetlight, disappearing into the darkness without a trace. The following day, my father contacted the police, concerned that Sarah might still be lurking on his property. After discussing the matter with his girlfriend, now my mother, and hearing her conviction that Sarah might cut the windows, scream when he was absent, hide inside the house, and ultimately harm him, the police investigated. They found no evidence of her presence, explaining that the area attracted numerous transients and nomads. Subsequently, my father made the error of sharing the unnerving encounter with his co-workers, fellow engineers. Their response was a farewell bid at the conclusion of each shift, with requests for him to pass along their greetings to Sarah. He never crossed paths with her again. He remains haunted by the enigma of the bundle she had so fervently protected, a mystery he will never unravel. Hello everyone! If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful or entertaining, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Your support motivates us to create more content you'll love. Thanks a million. And if you've just subscribed, please drop a comment saying I subscribed. We'd love to welcome you to our community.